Hey everyone, in this video I'm gonna go over all tank related changes in the update 37 called Scribes of Fate. The changes are actually good this time and I'm excited for them. The patch goes live on 13th of March on PC and 28th of March on consoles. And some of this stuff might still change before it goes live. Zos decided to give tanks 3 quality of life improvements. And the first one is that block no longer drops when you're swapping your bars. Right now on the live server, bar swapping will drop your block for a very short moment, which can easily cause deaths if you're not careful. You also cannot swap your bars while blocking channel attacks, like Dragon's Breaths, because a tick of damage could hit you during that tiny window when your block is down. But that won't be an issue anymore. The next great change is that Overtaunting will be harder to trigger. It will take 5 applications of taunt between 2 members in total, up from 3 to trigger it, which will be great for some fights, like for example Helra's Citadel's warrior fight. A strategy we used in the world record run to deal with the gargoyles was having an off-tank with the Tormentor set use Stampede in the middle to taunt all of the gargoyles. It obviously also taunted the warrior, and if I wasn't careful with taunts before warrior goes to the middle to trigger the gargoyles, it would become over-taunted after the off-tank triggers Tormentor. With this change it will be even more simple. Last quality of life improvement, they're reintroducing soft taunt. In the past, chain abilities such as Dicky Chains or Silver Leash had a 5-second soft taunt so that after chaining an ad, it wouldn't instantly run away from you. When Rogrov came out, Zos reworked some stuff regarding taunt and broke this soft taunt, and instead of fixing it, they just turned it off. Now it comes back with a 15-second timer instead of 5. This will also apply to skills and item sets that involve a single target pull, like Swarm Mother and Beckoning Armor. Area of effect pulls like Dark Convergence, Rush of Agony or Void Bash will not be affected by these changes. In the past, back when soft taunts were still a thing, I simply wouldn't have a range taunt in my trust setups in dungeons, because the idea was that I would correct it with a melee taunt within 5 seconds anyway to apply Minor Breach. And I might go back to that, but I'm unsure because there is another skill that now gains access to Minor Breach, Elemental Blockade, which I'll talk about in a moment. Zos also did some changes to Lie attacks in order to raise the floor, but this time they seem to be trying to keep the ceiling intact. The Lie attack scaling will be higher, but it will be capped at 3850 weapon and spell damage, which means that you should notice an increase in your Lie attack damage on tank. Now let's talk over universal skill changes. Wall of Frost and its morphs will now apply Minor Breach and reduce the movement speed of enemies by 40% for 4 seconds when damaging a chilled target, rather than immobilizing them for 4 seconds. So this is a massive buff. It means that by spamming Pulsar instead of a wall of elements, you'll be able to keep up Minor Brittle and Minor Breach on your enemies. Right now it's a bit more complicated. You have to make sure to pierce armor every single big ad, or spam Brawler with a charged 200 weapon, like you can see me doing the Movlor Cash world record. Overall, this is a great change that will make it much easier to reach penetration cap in trash, at the cost of immobilization, which will be a nuisance in dungeons, but is irrelevant in trials. Elemental Susceptibility. This skill is finally getting fixed. It will have its own effect to track its duration, so it doesn't bug out when a longer Major Breach is applied. It also gets a slight nerf. The status effects will be applied every 7.5 seconds instead of 6. Vampire's Mistform ability gets massive changes. It's no longer a toggled ability that reduces your damage taken from players or grants crowd control immunity while active. Instead, it now teleports you to a position of your cursor, up to a maximum of 15 meters, and reduces your damage taken from the next 3 projectiles by 100% while teleporting. Casting it in a quick succession will increase its cost, similar to how Streak's cost works. I've tested it a bit and it's a bit bugged on PTS. It seems to bug out when it isn't cast right after another ability. Also, it stops whenever it encounters any difference in terrain height. I think it will be a great mobility tool for tanks, and the part about reducing damage from projectiles could completely negate attacks like Smudge's Heavy, but I haven't tested it yet. The Elusive Mist morph will now grant Major Evasion and Major Expedition for 4 seconds after reappearing, rather than just Major Expedition. The Blood Mist morph will cause you to deal damage around you and heal for the damage caused once every 2 seconds over 20 seconds after activating the ability, rather than once every second while active. If you're playing a werewolf tank, it also got a slight buff. The Feeding Frenzy synergy now grants Minor Force and Empower for 10 seconds, rather than only Empower for 5 seconds. Now moving on to class skill changes. First we have the Necromancer. The Grave Robber synergy that gets provided by Boneyard was nerfed by 47%, so it's much weaker now. We also have the Death Gleaming passive buff. The Stamina and Magicka Restore you get when a nearby enemy dies has been buffed from 200 to 666. Now the Sorcerer. They got a massive buff to the Conjured Ward. It's now a legitimate damage shield rather than something you'd use only to proc the minor endurance and minor intellect buffs. But let's go over the changes one by one. The damage shield is increased by 10%. Max health cap was increased from 50% to 55%. And the ability will now scale with either Magicka or health, whichever is higher, rather than only Magicka. Now moving on to morph changes. The Hardened Ward morph increases the shield size by 7% and increases health cap to 72%, up from 60%. The Empowered Ward synergy didn't get any changes, but it has been renamed to Regenerative Ward to better reflect what it's actually doing. Now Warden Tank. Crystallized Shield and the Shimmering Shield morph now grant additional 2 ultimate whenever the shield takes damage, rather than restoring magicka equal to 22% of the ability's cost. These two morphs will also provide 33% smaller shield. The cost was increased to 4,320, up from 3,780. The Crystallized Slap morph retains the original shield value. I think it's a good change. You get more ultimate as a trade-off for making it much harder to sustain, since the cost is higher and you're not getting magicka back when hit. I don't think decreasing the value of the shield is a big deal. Now moving on to item set changes. We have a cool buff for Archdruid Devyric. Updated the area hitbox of the set to be 7 meter, 5 meter rectangle, rather than a cone. This should fix numerous issues where the set could miss the target it was spawned in. I'm so thankful for this change because this set's current hitbox is atrocious. Pearls of Ehlnofey. This set now grants 3 ultimate when you attempt to cast an ability that consumes resources while under 50% of your dominant resource, rather than 5 ultimate while under 30% of that resource. This was done to make the set more widely available to use while peeling back some of the raw power of the set. I really dislike this trend of punishing the high end. I don't see why they couldn't make this set give 5 ultimate while you're below 30% and 3 ultimate when you're between 30 and 50%. This way it would make it more accessible without punishing more skilled players. Harmony. This trait now grants you up to 880 health, magicka and stamina when you activate a synergy per trait, rather than increasing the healing, damage and shielding potency of synergies by 20% per trait. I don't think it's gonna outclass Infused, especially in groups where you have a DD using Alkosh and you don't want to steal their synergies, but I don't wanna say more until I test this further, because I could be wrong. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and if you have any more questions, feel free to ask in the comments. See you in the next video.